Hello, everybody, and a bit late with the picks this week because I have a job. No, I have a standard 9 to 5 job now, so that means that I don't know what it's going to be. I mean, if you really want these on Thursday morning, I can obviously do it Wednesday evening. But yeah, the usual Thursday morning recording is not an option anymore. So, anyways, doing this on Thursday evening for the UFC. Excuse me, whatever Apex number we're on at this point. Yeah. It is what it is. It's not a very good card. And it's interesting because the conversation about this, about any Apex card, frankly, so this is not unique, is always like, well, you can't judge this card until you watch it. It's a UFC card, it's gonna be good. And obviously, I fully admit that there are fights in the history of the UFC and even entire cards that have delivered well beyond what they did on paper. Well beyond. But I have never really understood the logic. I've never really understood the idea that, like, there is any MMA fan who doesn't have some level of criteria, some level of paper judgment that they cast upon a fight card. Like, for example, I was arguing with a guy on Twitter. He's never watched a PFL card. Never in his life. Watch his highlights, that's it. And I'll be clear. If you don't watch PFL, you don't watch PFL. That's awesome. Well, it's not awesome, but, like, you know, that's your prerogative. But that is the fact, is like, you're not watching a fight card because of the promotion putting it on. I will probably watch this. I will still watch this UFC card. But essentially, I'm doing the same thing. I'm applying a criteria, judging before the fight happens based on the matchups, who's fighting whom, the dynamics of those matchups, and so on, and deciding whether I care or not. Like, it's the same thing. Unless you're, like, willing to watch every single MMA fight known to mankind in any promotion, you are, to some degree, applying criteria for what you're interested in. Anyways, that's my little intro rant. So why is this card not particularly amazing? Let's just get into the overall here. One, you have a main event that doesn't make any sense to make it a main event. What I mean by that is you have an unranked fighter, Shamil Gaziev, or Gaziev. I was able to pronounce both ways, or heard it pronounced both ways, I should say. Unranked guy fighting in the main event. It's a heavyweight fight. This fight is going to be interesting for 1, maybe 1.5 rounds. Anything after that, not interesting. So why are we giving it a 4th and a 5th round? Why are we giving it potentially 10 more minutes to just stink? And then you pair it up with a co-main event between Vitor Petrino and Tyson Pedro, and I believe both of them are not ranked. Hang on, let me pull up the UFC rankings real quick. Actually, didn't think. I usually just ignore the UFC rankings so much that it doesn't really matter. Yeah, neither of which are ranked. Pedro has a round of cardio, maybe, before he fails. So you have kind of the same dynamic going on there. And then it gets a little bit better. Perez Mokaev, if it happens. Not a bad fight. Umar Nurmagomedov versus Almacan. It makes no sense for Umar to even have that fight, but, like, whatever. It's going to be, like, violent. Matt Schnell's Steve Erceg, that's my favorite fight on the card. So, you know, the rest of the main card, not too bad. But you have a main and a co-main that stink. And that's how we're going to end the night. That's how we're going to finish things off. It's never a good idea when the fights that I'm the least looking forward to are the co-main, or the main and the co-main. But here we are. So let's talk about Gaziev versus Rozenstruik first. There's, of course, there are always people that come out of the woodwork to talk about, like, kickboxing world titles and stuff. Be like, Rozenstruik's got a bunch. He must be an elite wrestler, an elite striker. He's really not. He's kind of like a slightly more technical version of Derek Lewis, with a worse, like, an anti-grappling game, frankly. Super powerful, has a good idea of like, accuracy and timing and all those things that just come with being a lifelong striker. And obviously, he could detonate Gaziev in the first round. In fact, that's what I'm picking to happen. Because Gaziev he's a very explosive striker. He throws everything into his strikes. It's pretty impressive. Powerful, explosive, fast, but very, very, very defensively open. And hasn't been knocked out, so I mean, maybe he has an amazing beard, and by that I mean like an absolutely solid chin that can't be stopped. Maybe that's the case. Maybe he can do the well, there's a couple of examples of this. Guys who are just bad strikers who just take it on the chin and it just doesn't matter. Maybe he's one of those guys. But I see Rozenstruik hitting him very, very hard at some point in this fight and him going down. Gaziev is probably the better fighter of the two. He's theoretically still learning stuff, even though he's only a year younger. But like the record differential in this fight is 6 fights. Plus all the aforementioned kickboxing that Rozenstruik has done. So like Rozenstruik is what he is. He's a finished product. Gaziev may yet learn and improve. But I can't pick it. And of course, like Gaziev does have a grappling game. Like if you watch his fight with I think it's Kirill Koronov is the fight. I may be wrong. It's one of the Russian opponents he has, though. Yeah, Kornilov. There you go. He gets tired and he starts relying on his wrestling and whatever, and he gets locked up in the clinch and he drives for it. So, like, he has an idea of like a takedown game. Obviously, trains with Islam Makhachev, at least part time. So obviously, he has some ideas of how to implement a grappling game. But it doesn't seem to be like what he wants to do. And he seems to get tired before he ever really tries to do it. So it's like, all right, sure, if this fight goes into the second round, late second round, Gaziev is tired, Rozenstruik is tired, maybe Gaziev just like flings himself into getting takedowns and that actually becomes a factor in the fight. But I'm just hoping not. Like I wouldn't even hate Gaziev knocking out Rozenstruik, but I want somebody unconscious before we get through 7.5 minutes of this fight. That's what I want. So that's why I'm picking Rozenstruik by TKO. We'll find out. It's got some intrigue, I guess, but like it's heavyweight. Rozenstruik is the underdog, 134 to plus 145. And Gaziev is the favorite, minus 160 to minus 175. I can't say that I did necessarily disagree with that. I mean, Rozenstruik has been on a pretty bad run lately. 1 in 3 in his last 4. That win being Chris Daukaus, who ended up going down to 205 and has not looked exactly great since then. But like the losses to Almeida, Blades, and Volkov, you have to say those are all like far, far better, at least far more proven fighters than Gaziev. I think Gaziev is getting that Islam rub a little bit too much. Moving down to 205 in the co-main event, Vitor Petrino versus Tyson Pedro. I have been told that it's Pedro. I don't want it to be Pedro. That's a very unfortunate name if that's the case. So I'm going with Pedro. Pedro either blows you out of the water or gasses out. That's basically it. He's got 1 round of actually effective cardio, and then he kind of falls apart. And if you're a guy like Anton Turkalj or Harry Hunsucker or Ike Villanueva, he just blows you out of the water. If you're Modestas Bukauskas, he ends up going to like a really unimpressive decision with you and losing. And if you're really anyone else, you detonate him. Shogun, submission loss to Ovince St. Preux, the decision to Ilir Latifi. Petrino is actually pretty good. Like he's very, very, very simplistic. Like it's a power striking into swinging cling sort of grappling style, realistically. and his game doesn't really divorce itself. Like he kind of has to grapple. Like the Anton Turkalj fight was a good example of like you're lighting this guy up on the feet, but you can't help but grapple with him, which is problematic. All of that being said, he's tough enough to take Pedro's abuse for like the first round or so, and then come out on top with a TKO or a submission or something as the fight goes on. He has that kind of physicality to compete with Pedro, and he'll get it done. So I've got Vitor Petrino by submission, probably second round. I'll even get that specific. And Petrino's a minus 300 to minus 330 favorite, plus 240 to plus 260. By the way, most of these lines, very wide. Flyweight fight, Alex Perez versus Muhammad Mokaev. I'm just betting on this fight just not happening. Perez has pulled out of, or has had 11 fights in the last 4 years get canceled. He has fought 4 times in those 4 years. So, yeah, I'm betting this fight won't happen. But if it does, I don't really trust what Perez looks like. I mean, I've seen the guy fight a total of like 2 minutes at a time for 4 years. I haven't seen him do well since 2020. That's 4 years. This is it's a bit insane. Yeah. As much as I'm really not as big on Muhammad Mokaev as a lot of people are, a lot of people are like he's going to be a future champion and stuff, and I don't buy it. Simply put, it has to be said that he is a guy who will bring a persistent grappling threat to the table. Not a very good striker, but kind of makes up for it by being able to get into a lot of different kind of entries into the grappling realm and make this really, really uncomfortable for Perez, who is used to like bullying people. And when he can't bully people, he generally speaking loses. So I got to take Mokaev to be able to force clinches on him, and even if it's something like the Charles Johnson fight where like he doesn't get a lot done, he's like stalled out, but like holding on and scoring a couple of knees to the thighs or whatever. I do tend to think that is going to be the case. Like as much as Perez before this whole like 4-year period of like frankly hell started, you know, he was kind of winning me over. I was like, hey, he's got a good power low kick game, good power boxing game. He's got some wrestling. This is pretty good. This is fun. He could scramble. He's a good athlete. And then it really just fell apart where like even when he got into the cage, he could just be bullied. So yeah, I'm going to go with Mokaev. I don't really know what the fight will look like. I will pick Mokaev by submission. But I don't know. A really boring, like wrestling heavy performance to get a decision could be the case. He could get him done very, very quickly. Or maybe Perez comes out here and he's confronted some inner demons. He's nice and healthy, and he delivers something really, really cool. I don't know, but a lot of people are calling for Mokaev to get a title shot after this, and it's a two-sided coin on this one. On one hand, there is no way that beating Alex Perez in 2024 should get you a title shot. That shouldn't happen. But if you were to like, hey, Pantoja's got to defend his belt in 4 months' time, 4 or 5 months' time, whatever it is. He's got to fight somebody. And Moreno just lost. Royval's got a bad MCL. Amir Albazi just pulled out with injury. Who are you going to go with? I guess it is Mokaev. It's just a sad state of the division at that point. But it probably is the case. Mokaev is a minus 350 to minus 390 favorite. Perez plus 240 to plus 290. I think this is the biggest favorite on the card, but I could be wrong. I was going to say there's another four-digit favorite, but it is smaller than the minus 1200 to minus 1667 Umar Nurmagomedov favorite against Beksak Almakan. Almakan, I believe, is the name. Please don't roast me if I'm mispronouncing his name. I am not very good with the Kazakh names. There's not much to say about Umar Nurmagomedov. We know who he is. He's an incredibly potent wrestler, powerful striker, although not very nuanced. Has a submission game, scrambles well, good cardio, pushes the pace, very, very strong. Seems to be pretty durable. He's not troubled by getting hit. He is kind of like the best Khabib Nurmagomedov heir, really. Like, a lot of people want to put like Islam Makhachev in there, but I think they're fundamentally kind of different fighters. People wanted to put Abubakar Nurmagomedov there. That's a joke. People wanted to put Zabit Nurmagomedov, Magomedov, pardon me, for some reason there, which made no sense whatsoever. And like Mokaev, I guess, kind of is the other option. But like, yeah, Umar is the most Khabib. Almakhan has some powerful striking, some creative striking, pretty high paced. I like a lot of the building blocks there, but like his career is very manicured. He's a 5'7" guy, so he's not like huge for the division or anything. Don't know what his reach is, but I imagine it's north of 67 inches. He doesn't appear to have short arms. He appears to have relatively long arms. Some counter wrestling, some grappling ability, but like his opponents are all like, they have decent records. They're not necessarily even bad fighters, but like there's a lot of short guys there. Like in his last 5 fights, I think he fought like one guy who was within 3 inches of his height. Only one, which is a problem. It's kind of like I don't know. I don't know what he looks like at size parity. It's outside of facing Mauro Marini, I think is his name. It's a guy who's 14-1 that he beat not too long ago. But like, that's a can crusher. So I don't know what that means. Anyways, I'm picking Umar to win by submission. Maybe Bexat surprises us here, but probably not. It's a pretty hollow fight. It's a fight that really does not make any sense for Umar Nurmagomedov, who is coming off of beating, Ronnie Barcelos, Nate Maness, Brian Kelleher, Sergey Morozov. Like, this is kind of the Morozov fight again. I guess you could argue a little bit better because Morozov's like fight takes him right into it, but right into the jaws of defeat, I guess. But yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Matt Schnell versus Steve Erceg. Having a hard time figuring out what this fight will actually look like because it's a sort of fight that I don't think we've really actually seen Schnell have. Because Schnell's deal is fighting guys way better athletically than him, but who are just kind of power beasts. And then he like survives, out scrambles them, outworks them, takes out the opportunities that they give him. And it's like, Erceg's not really going to do like any of that, both positive and negative. Like, he's not that kind of athlete. He is kind of like Matt Schnell fighting Matt Schnell. They're both like they're both 5'8". They're both guys who are used to being a little bit tall and probably won't be here. They're a little bit goofy as strikers. They're a little bit unorthodox as strikers, and they're incredible game. They're incredibly game, as in tough, as in gritty, as in they take bad moments and they just stay really cool on it. And Erceg is the younger guy, 6 years younger. Could be theoretically learning still. Schnell does look a little bit washed in his recent fights. Like that fight with Sumu Darji is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Like, that is a great comeback. But it is also like, my guy, you just got absolutely destroyed by Sumu Darji for most of that fight, and he's not great. It's not great. His best win is like Malcolm Gordon. Anyways, I'm gonna go with Erceg to just be kind of like a little bit better, like a little bit more prime, a little bit more creative as a striker, a little more defensively responsible, because Schnell is very chin in the air type of guy. But I'm hoping for like a really, really good scrap where like both guys get hit a lot. And we have some fun times. I've got Urseg by decision. He is a minus 355 to minus 450 favorite. Schnell plus 270, pardon me. 2 plus 350. Eric Anders versus Jamie Pickett can burn in a fire. This is a terribly match-made fight. I don't really know why Pickett is around, having lost 4 straight. I don't particularly know why we're still booking Anders at 1-3 in his last 4. They're both kind of similar for different reasons. They're like decently good for 185 athletes. Like they're solid. But Anders is like, because he made his pro debut at 28 after this as a second career after he did football. It's left him with this very, very plain game that ends up just clinching a lot of the time. And Pickett clinches a lot of the time because he's really, really not comfortable fighting at range. He's incredibly uncomfortable and he panic clinches. So it kind of ruins the speed and the power that he has, the explosiveness that he has, because he's just going to smash into Anders at some point. And Anders is the better athlete, the stronger athlete, the more powerful guy. I assume this will go the distance because if you look at Pickett's finishes, they tend to be relatively dynamic displays. And outside of a head kick knockout of Tim Williams, it's not really what Anders does. He just kind of hits you very hard, but you see it coming a lot of the time. And you can prepare for it. And you can, it's not that like Pickett's very chinny. It's just in his panic, he leaves openings to do just weird stuff to him. And Anders doesn't really do that. But he's a minus 430 to minus 500 favorite. Pickett coming back at plus 320 to plus 375. Vinicius Oliveira versus Bernardo Sopai. Oliveira had this line about him on the Contender Series. I think it was Laura Sanko, who said he's gotten really comfortable with the idea that he can be knocked out. It's apt, but I don't think it's necessarily comfort. I think it's just acceptance. Like he still looks very, very nervous at times. But he's willing to play the hands low, create a lot of different angles, utilize his speed, utilize head movement, create some awkward and effective, potent offense. Not easy to take down. Fairly rangy at 5'9" for the 135 weight class. And he's fighting a 5'6" Sopai. I don't know what Sopai's reach is, but I don't think it's very long. It just doesn't look it. And Sopai he's fine. Like I have legitimately no problem with him getting signed by the UFC. He's kind of well-rounded, decently athletic sort of guy. Seems kind of well put together, but like on short notice, I'm going to take the guy who's just kind of doesn't really need a game plan. He kind of just does creative stuff, and you're the one that needs to prepare for him. So I'm going to go with Oliveira by decision because Sapai has never been finished, never been knocked out. So I'm going to pay respect to that. And surprisingly enough, pretty even here. Minus 105 to minus 125 on Oliveira, plus 105 to minus 125 on Sopai. Javid Basharat. Speaking of like weird matchmaking, Basharat's entire career, including this fight against Eamon Zahabi, he started off fighting Trevin Jones, won that fight, stepped up to Tony Gravely, won that fight. All right, so far so good. Then it's like, here's a debuting Matush Mendonca. Okay. And then up to Victor Henry, and then back down to Eamon Zahabi. It's a very weird trajectory. It's bizarre. Javid Basharat's pretty good. Like he's well-rounded. He tends to fight to a relatively good game plan. Like his fights look like they're tailored for who he's fighting, which I appreciate. Part of me always thinks that there's a little bit too much flashiness to him for his physical attributes. A little bit too much. Conor McGregor is the one that kind of like people compared him to when he came in. And while I wouldn't go that far, there is that sort of like style over substance to him, which I think will burn him at some point. But it's not with Zahabi. Zahabi's not very good. He's got some decent power, some decent counter striking, some good eyes for it, some decent feel, opportunistic speed. But he fights at a low pace and is very, very one note. There's not a lot of variety to him at all. And it shows that every time he starts fighting fighters that are like, actually pretty good. Like he just looks flawed. He looks too slow in terms of output, or too inactive and too uncreative to realistically get it done. And I think Javid is going to outpace him, going to have more ideas, or at least a broader set of ideas. And then, it's not like Zahabi is a much, much better athlete or anything like that. He's notably not a very good athlete for 135. Basharat by decision. He's minus 180, or not minus 180, minus 800 to minus 910. Zahabi at plus 540 to plus 600. By the way, didn't do the rant about gambling. Do not bet what you cannot lose. There you go. Simple, clear cut. Random stuff happens in MMA a little bit too much. Christian Leroy Duncan versus Claudio Ribeiro is two meme fighters who are like really particularly good athletes who have undoubtedly dominated their gyms and are under the opinion they're much, much better than they actually are. Ribeiro's best win is Joseph Holmes. CDL lost to Armin Petrosian. It's not great. I'm at the end of the day, though, going to go with Christian Leroy Duncan. Both of these guys are probably at their best when they're at range, but like Duncan is longer by 2 inches. He's an inch taller. Both of these guys are pretty willing to clinch to try to avoid pocket striking. Like they like being fully outside, fully inside. And Christian Leroy Duncan is not good in the clinch. I want to make that clear, but like he's strong in the clinch. Probably could just kind of stall Ribeiro out there, and I don't know, maybe pick up a TKO at some point with a nice elbow or like get some ground and pound in. I don't know. CLD, TKO. He's a minus 290 to minus 320 favorite. Ribeiro plus 225 to plus 250. I will say, I think this fight will be entertaining, even though I'm pretty dismissive of it as an analytical exercise. But, it's got potential to be fun. Ludovic Klein versus AJ Cunningham. AJ Cunningham, super late notice replacement here. I'm going to go with Ludovic Klein here. I will fully say that I was not big on Ludovic Klein when he first came in. I was kind of like, it's kind of like just a generic kickboxer who is pretty short. Like he's 5'7". He was coming in at 145. Now he's at 155. But it's like, it's worked out. It's been very, very good. I can't say that I've been watching his fights and being like, you know what? I didn't realize he could do that. I didn't realize that he had that. I didn't realize he had that depth, that X factor. But he keeps winning. And AJ Cunningham, well, I do respect the fact that he, the fight he had with Jason Mullen, particularly, when Mullen put him in like big danger on the ground a couple times, and he just ended up actually, rear naked choking him. Very impressive to do that. But very defensively open. Kind of likes to wait on counter strikes a little bit too much. Klein he's not going to bring a huge pace to Klein. He has some cardio issues, gas tank issues. I am wondering if fighting at 155 might fix those a little bit. That 10 less pounds to cut sort of thing. But yeah, Klein by decision because he's not been finishing anybody, but he is the more creative guy. He will not run out of ideas. I think AJ will. AJ's not really a grappler. Like he is predominantly kind of a striker. So, he'll stand and bang with Klein, which I think is a generally bad idea. And then we have Loic Razabov versus Abdul Karim El Sawadi. I'm going with El Sawadi here. They're both kind of really similar in the sense that they both want to go forward and smash into each other, punching my hands together there, and kind of be tanks. And it'll be interesting because if one of them could just dominate the wrestling, they're going to win this fight. To be honest, if Razabov comes out and just takes down El Sawadi with ease, that's it. If El Sawadi comes out and takes Razabov down with ease, that is it. I'm just kind of going with El Sawadi because I haven't seen him lose in a grappling display. Whereas like we saw that with Razapov against Matusz Rebeski, where like he had some problems. And like he's also not as damage oriented. Like Razapov is the type of guy to win a 15-minute decision by clinging on top position. El Sawadi wants to break your face in. Oh, by the way, we didn't do Klein versus Cunningham odds. Minus 900 to minus 1,000 on Klein, plus 570 to plus 650 on Cunningham in that fight. And then for this one, we have minus 175 for El Sawadi to minus 190, and Radzepov plus 143 to plus 160. That's it for the fight card. It's a short one. It's a short breakdown this time around, mostly because we only have 11 fights, and there's not really a lot of enjoyable ones there, or like really interesting ones. Like there are some fights I'm very much looking forward to. Like I said, Urseg versus Schnell, Perez versus Bokayev could be good, and Oliveira versus Sopai is not too bad. Basharat versus Ahadi is not so bad. CLD versus Ribeiro should be a fun Mimi time, and then I don't really have great expectations for the first two fights. Although, if El Sawadi beats Razapov, that'll be pretty cool. Because, he is facing a guy who's very much counter to his style and might be able to get through it. Anyways, check out the links down below for my Discord server with the MMA simulator. Social medias and all the good video game stuff is down there as well. Have a lovely day.